The relentless New York drizzle turned the glass of Julian Thorne's customized Tesla into a shimmering, abstract canvas. Outside, the city was a $20 million view he was too tired to appreciate. Julian, a Wall Street titan whose name resonated in boardrooms from Midtown to Silicon Valley, was cutting through a less-traveled artery beneath the massive, graying underbelly of the Manhattan Bridge. He wasn't supposed to be here. His life had strict lines, one for success, one for everything else. As the car slowed for a pothole, a fleeting image snagged his eye, forcing his foot onto the brake. This was a sight that should not exist in a nation with a GDP measured in trillions. Tucked away against a concrete pillar, partially hidden by a stack of wet cardboard boxes, was a figure. A small, almost childlike figure, huddled beneath a threadbare blanket. Julian leaned forward, his brow furrowed in annoyance. He saw movement. Then he saw the cause of the movement. Two tiny, pinkish bundles wrapped in faded receiving blankets, resting on either side of the figure. Babies. His initial instinct was not compassion, but sharp, cold irritation. Another mess the city failed to clean up, another drain on the system. He'd seen enough of the forgotten souls. But this, a teenage girl, maybe, with two infants, felt like a deliberate slap in the face of his carefully constructed reality. He unlocked the door, the expensive suit momentarily forgotten. He needed to solve this problem, not save a life. He got out of the car, the silence of the underpass amplifying the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water. This is exactly the kind of chaos I worked my whole life to escape. But what he was about to discover would be the moment his past finally caught up with his present. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. The air was thick with the metallic scent of rain and the acrid smell of desperation. Julian, standing tall and imposing in the gloom, approached cautiously. The figure flinched, not waking up, but instinctively drawing the blanket tighter over the infants. He noticed her hands first, scarred, the nails bitten down, clutching the edge of the blanket like a lifeline. He cleared his throat, the sound like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. "Hey, wake up. You can't stay here," Julian's voice was, clipped, carrying the effortless authority of a man used to being obeyed. "This is public property. Do you have any family? Social services need to be called. We need to get you and those babies somewhere safe now." The blanket shifted, and a face emerged, pale and shockingly young. Her eyes, wide and the color of faded denim, were instantly defiant but laced with profound exhaustion. She looked like she hadn't slept a full night in months. This was Lily Carter, barely 18, carrying the weight of the world, and two 6-month-old twin boys, Finn and Leo, on her slight shoulders. The sight of the man, impeccably dressed and radiating wealth, made her instinctively pull herself further back into the shadows. He looked like the kind of man who'd call the police just to clear the sidewalk. "Please," she whispered, her voice rough, hoarse from the cold air. "We're not hurting anyone. Just let us sleep. I'll be gone before the morning shift starts." Her breath misted in the cold, and she subtly repositioned her body to fully shield the twins. She knew how the world saw her. A mistake. Julian took a step back, the sight of the twins finally registering fully. Their cheeks were chapped, their breathing shallow but steady. They were dressed in layers of mismatched, oversized clothing, a desperate attempt to fend off the harsh, late-fall cold. He felt a flicker of something, a tiny, uncomfortable spark of recognition, the vulnerability of the utterly powerless. He immediately crushed it. "Focus, Julian. Policy, not feeling. This is about logistics, not salvation. Look, kid, this isn't a motel. It's dangerous. You're underneath a major road. The exhaust fumes alone are toxic. Where's your family? Where's their father? This is reckless, irresponsible parenting." Julian's tone hardened, the father question loaded with judgment. He assumed irresponsibility, a quick decision leading to an eternal burden. Lily's face tightened, the defiance instantly replaced by a mask of raw, visceral pain. Their father. He's not an issue. He's gone. And my family. They made it very clear I'm not welcome. They said I ruined everything. Their reputation, their church standing, everything. She pulled the blanket up, shielding the babies from his stare as if he were the rain itself. I am responsible for them. That's why we're still breathing. I'll take the risk. Julian pulled out his phone, ready to call the NYPD, a purely logistical, emotionally detached solution. Get them into the system. Let the city deal with the consequences. But as he looked down, he saw a book tucked beside her, its cover water-damaged but immediately recognizable. A worn, heavy copy of John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. A young, homeless mother, struggling against the harsh realities of American poverty, reading a classic about displaced American families. It was a discordant detail, a splash of unexpected intellectual light in the suffocating darkness that completely broke his prepared mental script. That book, he pointed, momentarily forgetting the 911 dialing. Why that book? Out of everything. You could grab, why carry that? Lily's eyes darted to the book, a faint, almost invisible light returning to them. It's about people who lose everything, who are told they don't belong, that they're okies, trash, but they keep going. They keep fighting for their family. They keep their dignity, even when they have nothing. I found it in a recycling bin downtown. It reminds me that I'm not the first person this country left behind. Julian, the ruthless financial operator, was now talking literature and socio-economic displacement with a homeless teen. It was a surreal exchange. The American dream is still alive, kid. You just need to work harder than everyone else, he stated, reverting to the corporate mantra that had built his empire. The dream is only for people who can afford to sleep indoors, sir. Lily shot back, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. When you're fighting just to keep 2 lives alive with no safety net, work harder just means 1 more hour of freezing, desperate searching. The conviction in her voice was shattering. It was not a plea for money, but a brutal statement of fact. Julian felt the ground shift under his feet. He reached into his suit jacket, not for the phone, but for his wallet. He pulled out a thick wad of cash, hundreds of dollars. Here, take this. Get a room for a week. Call social services in the morning. Don't wait. Lily didn't move. She eyed the money with suspicion, then lifted her chin. I need formula and diapers more than a temporary room, sir. And what then? What happens after the week is over? Money doesn't fix the broken system. It just delays the inevitable. If you want to help, give me a chance, not a handout. Her refusal of the easy money was the second break in Julian's armor. Pride. She had an impossible amount of pride. Rehook, Zeigarnik effect. Julian's carefully constructed world of logic and profit was disintegrating. But the biggest shock was the single item he saw lying next to her, beneath the copy of Steinbeck, a faded childhood photograph that made his world stop spinning and forced him to confront the ghost of his own past. Hidden CTA. What did Julian see that could possibly stop a man who only cares about the bottom line? Julian's gaze followed hers and landed on a small, laminated photograph. It was a picture of a little boy, maybe 7 years old, grinning awkwardly while wearing an oversized baseball cap and holding a miniature baseball bat. A completely ordinary, innocent, all-American childhood snapshot from the 1970s. Julian's carefully controlled breath hitched. He knew that photo. He owned an identical one, buried in a lockbox in the back of his penthouse study, the only relic he kept from his forgotten life. The little boy in the photograph was himself. He slowly crouched down, his expensive Italian leather shoes sinking into the damp grit. He ignored the cold seeping through his trousers. Where did you get this? His voice was barely a rasp, the years of boardroom training failing him completely. His composure was gone, replaced by naked desperation. Lily looked utterly confused, clutching the photo defensively, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. My mother gave it to me. She said it was the only picture she had of her brother before he ran away, before he changed his name and became someone else. She kept it, even when everything else was gone. Your mother? Julian asked, his mind racing through decades of buried family history. The reason he ran away. The sister he never saw again. The one who bore the family name while he rebuilt his life under the guise of Julian Thorne. The years melted away, and the cold, hard businessman was gone, replaced by a terrified, confused little brother. The prodigal son was back, brought low by a piece of laminated paper. Could this desperate girl, sleeping under a bridge with his nephews, truly be the daughter of his sister Martha, the sister he had spent 30 years pretending didn't exist? This wasn't a city problem. This was his reckoning, his karmic debt. He reached out a hand, not to give money, but to touch the photograph, his voice regaining a desperate, sharp edge. "What is your mother's name, kid? Tell me her name now." Lily, now truly frightened by the sudden, intense shift in the rich man's demeanor, hesitated. This was no longer a conversation about charity. This felt like an interrogation, possibly a threat. She instinctively pulled the babies closer, shielding them with her body. She looked wildly around the empty concrete tunnel, wondering if she had just invited a more dangerous kind of trouble. She was silent, her wide eyes locked on his. Hidden CTA, Curiosity Gap, Micro Cliffhanger. Julian's past had just walked out of the shadows and was staring him down. But before he could force an answer from the terrified girl, the sound of a heavy, unfamiliar engine rumbled nearby, a sound that made Lily's pale face go white with sheer terror. Someone was looking for her, and Julian knew, instantly, that this wasn't the police or social services. What dark secret was chasing the girl and his twin nephews? The heavy rumble of an engine suddenly broke the sterile silence of the underpass. It wasn't the gentle hum of a city bus, nor the whine of a police cruiser. It was the distinct, powerful thrum of a large customized vehicle, maybe a heavy-duty pickup, and it was slowing down. Lily's pale face went instantly white, her eyes snapping from Julian to the entrance of the concrete tunnel. She instinctively pressed Finn and Leo into her chest, creating a human shield. "No, no, no," she whispered, a desperate prayer. "They found us. They always find us." Julian, still crouched, instantly registered the pure, paralyzing terror in her voice. This wasn't the fear of being caught by the authorities. This was the fear of being hunted. He rose quickly, his instincts, honed by decades of dealing with corporate sharks and hostile takeovers, taking over. He was no longer a philanthropist or a lost brother. He was a protector. Who is they? He demanded, his voice low and urgent. "My family." "My mother's side," Lily gasped, her voice trembling. "They call themselves the Congregation of the Light. They don't believe in this." She gestured desperately at the babies. "They said the twins are a curse, a stain. They want to take them and place them with a worthy family. They have people looking for me everywhere, especially the man who financed their church, my grandfather. Elias." The pickup truck, a huge black, intimidating American F-350 with tinted windows, slowly drove past the mouth of the tunnel, its blinding spotlights momentarily sweeping the dark area. It didn't stop, but the driver was obviously searching. "Get up. Now!" Julian commanded, grabbing her arm. He didn't wait for a reply, lifting Lily and the babies gently but forcefully. His heart was hammering. He had spent his life accumulating power to control his environment, but in this moment, his only currency was speed. "My car, quickly." "Don't look at them. Stay low." He practically shoved her and the twins into the back seat of the Tesla. The juxtaposition of the desperate, shivering young woman with her children and the $1 million interior was jarring, a stark image of America's economic divide. Julian jumped into the driver's seat, his hands tight on the wheel, and floored it before the F-350 could circle back. The silence in the car was broken only by the whimpering of the babies, whose tiny lungs were protesting the sudden movement. As they sped through the city streets, Julian glanced in the rearview mirror, his gaze falling on Lily's exhausted face. He was driving blind, fueled by adrenaline and a terrifying rush of delayed familial obligation. He pulled his phone from his pocket, bypassing his assistant and his security chief. He called the one person who handled his most sensitive, high-stakes problems, his personal attorney, Marcus Dane. Marcus, clear the calendars. Block out the next 72 hours. I have a situation, a family situation. I need a secure location immediately. A location with no digital footprint, no staff, and a high-level security clearance. Use the upstate retreat, the one with the encrypted fiber lines. I'll send you the coordinates. And Marcus. Julian's voice dropped to a level of cold intensity that made even the attorney pause. I need a full, deep-dive background check on a group called the Congregation of the Light, tied to an Elias Carter. Do not use standard channels. I want absolute discretion. Julian ended the call and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, not bothering to wait for a reply. He was running not from the law, but from a powerful, possibly dangerous family sect. A type of deeply ingrained cultural threat that his old life could never have prepared him for. He sped onto the highway, leaving the neon chaos of Manhattan behind, heading north toward the relative safety of the Hudson Valley. Lily, still trembling, finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Why are you helping us? You were going to call the police. Julian kept his eyes on the road, the rain a constant smear across the windshield. That photo, that little boy with the baseball bat, that was me, Lily. Your mother, Martha, she's my sister. The sister I left behind when I was 17 and foolish. I changed my name, I changed my life, and I tried to forget everything. But you and those boys... He paused, swallowing a painful lump of regret. You are the consequences of my selfishness. I am responsible for you. Lily stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. The man who was her uncle, the legendary Julian Thorne, one of America's most untouchable billionaires, was admitting he was family. Martha, my mother, she whispered, her voice cracking. Is she okay? Julian's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Tell me everything, Lily. Start from the beginning. Tell me about my sister. The story unfolded in the dark confines of the luxury sedan, a painful narrative of abandonment and control, the classic American tragedy hidden behind a white picket fence. Martha, abandoned by her ambitious younger brother, had married into a highly controlling religious community after her husband, Elias Carter's son, had died. Elias, a domineering patriarch and a major financial backer of the congregation, had taken her in, but with brutal conditions. When Lily got pregnant by a boy outside the congregation, she was branded a pariah. When she refused to give up the babies to be purified by adoption within the church, Elias had locked her up. She had managed a desperate, chaotic escape less than a week ago, fleeing into the anonymity of New York City, which she hoped would swallow her whole. They teach that the only true path is obedience, Lily explained, her voice heavy with the cultural weight of the community she had escaped. They control everything, what you read, what you wear, who you speak to. They saw Finn and Leo not as life, but as rebellion. Elias said he'd bring me back by any means necessary, to save the souls of my sinful offspring. Anticipation building. Rehook. Julian listened, the anger rising in his chest, not just for Lily, but for the sister he had left vulnerable to this kind of control. He realized that Elias Carter was not just a religious fanatic, but a ruthless man of power, operating with the same kind of financial and social leverage Julian himself wielded. Julian was about to enter the most dangerous negotiation of his career, a hostile takeover of a family, not a company. But before he could devise a plan, the silence of the car was broken by an urgent, high-pitched cry that signaled a fresh, immediate crisis. Hidden CTA. What medical crisis did the twins face, and could Julian's wealth fix a problem caused by poverty? The silence in the car was broken by the frantic, high-pitched wail of little Finn. It wasn't the usual fussing. It was a desperate, pained sound. Lily quickly checked him, her face twisting in panic. He's burning up. He feels hot, Julian. We ran out of the medicine last night. I need infant Tylenol now. He hasn't been right since we slept in that park 2 days ago. Julian slammed his hand onto the steering wheel. He could buy an island, but he couldn't conjure medicine in the middle of a remote highway at 1 a.m. His wealth was useless against this fundamental human fragility. He saw a faint sign for a remote gas station and took the exit aggressively. Stay here. Keep them quiet. I'll be 2 minutes, Julian ordered, pulling up to the deserted fluorescent-lit station. He burst into the station's mini-mart, startling the sole, tired clerk. Julian grabbed a thermometer and the largest bottle of children's pain reliever he could find. He also grabbed bottles of water, formula, and a large bag of diapers, throwing them all onto the counter. How much? Julian demanded, pulling out his wallet. The clerk, a young man who looked half asleep, stared at Julian's tailored suit and desperate eyes. The total is $87.50, sir. You okay? Julian barely heard him. He threw a stack of hundreds onto the counter. Keep the change. And forget you ever saw me. He ran back to the car. Lily quickly took Finn's temperature. It was high, 103.5 Cirx textva. Julian watched, helpless, as Lily skillfully administered the medicine. The sight of her careful, loving hands in the stark light of the gas station proving her fitness as a mother more than any social service report ever could. If we can just get him stable, Lily whispered, her eyes filled with tears of exhaustion and relief. Just a few more hours until daylight. Julian didn't hesitate. He got back behind the wheel, his entire focus now on the well-being of the 2 tiny lives he barely knew. He was not just saving his sister's daughter. He was saving his own chance at redemption, at rewriting the story of the brother who walked away. Micro cliffhanger, anticipation building. The medicine brought the fever down, but Julian knew this was only the first shot fired in the war for Lily and the twins. He was a master of finance, but now he had to become a master of defense against a powerful, insidious adversary. As the sun began to rise, painting the Hudson Valley in cold, pale light, Julian realized he had to leverage his ultimate, hidden power, the ruthless side of Julian Thorne he had only ever used for multi-billion-dollar deals, to protect his family. But Elias Carter was watching, and he was about to make the first move. Julian's upstate retreat was a fortress disguised as a minimalist architectural marvel. Nestled deep in the Hudson Valley woods, the structure was self-sufficient, highly secure, and most importantly, invisible to anyone not meant to find it. As the sun fully rose, casting long shadows across the polished concrete floors, Lily and the twins finally found a semblance of peace. Finn's fever had broken, and both babies were sleeping soundly in temporary cribs. Julian's staff had rushed in before dawn. Julian stood by the window, not admiring the panoramic view, but analyzing the threat. Marcus Dane, his attorney, had arrived, his face grim. Julian, the background check is deep. Elias Carter is not just a church elder. He's a serious power broker in his state, a kind of modern cult leader, using his wealth to control local politics and the judiciary. He has the resources to make Lily disappear, legally or otherwise. He's operating under the guise of religious freedom and family values. He's using the law as a weapon, Julian observed, his voice devoid of emotion, the Wall Street titan fully engaged. Just like I used to. But I know how to counter a hostile takeover, Marcus. We don't fight him on his battlefield. We change the game. Julian spent the next 48 hours in a controlled frenzy of defense strategy, utilizing his black book of favors and influence. He didn't just hire lawyers. He mobilized a team of digital forensics experts to map Elias's network and a crisis communications firm to prepare for a public relations war. He discovered that Martha, his sister, had tragically passed away 2 years prior due to an untreated illness, a clear indicator of the neglect and control within the congregation. The loss hit Julian like a physical blow. He had missed his chance for reconciliation. Lily, now safe and fed, was given a moment to process the shocking revelation that the billionaire was her uncle. She walked into Julian's study, holding the now awake babies who gurgled contentedly. "Why me? Why now?" Lily asked quietly, looking past the photo of the young Julian. "You had 30 years to find Martha. You're trying to fix a past mistake by saving me." Julian turned, his facade of corporate control finally cracking. "You're right," he admitted, the admission tasting like ash. "I ran because my father said I was weak. I ran because I thought success was about detachment. I built an empire so I would never need anyone, especially family. When I saw that photo, it wasn't just my memory. It was Martha telling me I had one last chance to be a brother, to be family. I won't fail her again. Lily." I will not let Elias take you or my nephews. Hidden CTA. Emotional climax. It was a profound moment of raw confession. A billionaire brought to his knees by the ghosts of his childhood. But Julian's redemption was about to be challenged, as Elias Carter was not waiting for a formal legal battle. He was already at the gates. What audacious move did Elias make to reclaim his property? The security alert blared just hours later. Elias Carter, using his political clout, had somehow obtained a temporary child safety warrant based on Lily's homelessness and lack of income. He had dispatched local, sympathetic law enforcement, backed by his own private security detail, to Julian's perimeter. The paperwork was flimsy, but legally binding enough in that jurisdiction to cause immediate trouble. Julian stood his ground at the gate, flanked by Marcus and his head of security. Elias Carter, a man whose face was a study in cold, self-righteous certainty, stepped out of a black SUV. Julian Thorne, Elias stated, his voice a practiced, booming baritone. I appreciate your concern, but this is a family matter under the protection of the state. The girl is unstable and the children are at risk. They belong under the guidance of the congregation. Turn them over and we can forget this ever happened. Julian didn't flinch. You call this guidance, Elias? My sister, your daughter-in-law, died under your roof from neglect. Your guidance led Lily to sleep under a bridge with my nephews. This is not about family values. It's about control and money. You want these boys as leverage? Elias scoffed. You changed your name and abandoned your kin for 30 years. You have no legal standing, Mr. Thorne. I have a warrant. Give them up. You only have a paper warrant, Elias, Julian replied, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face, the smile that had terrified CEOs across the globe. But I have something else, the truth. Marcus has filed an emergency affidavit in federal court, detailing the pattern of abuse and illegal financial structuring within your congregation, all tied to your tax-exempt foundation. We have digital proof that you blackmailed local judges, including the one who signed this flimsy warrant. When this hits the news, your followers will scatter, and your empire will collapse. Elias's composure finally broke. The fear of public exposure and the collapse of his financial kingdom was more potent than any religious dogma. You wouldn't dare. You can't fight God. I don't fight God, Elias. I fight hypocrites, Julian hissed. And in the state of New York, a DNA test will confirm I am the blood relative, the uncle, who just saved these children's lives. You're done. Leave my property now, and count yourself lucky that the only thing you lose today is your power. Elias, pale and defeated, climbed back into his SUV without another word. The police, sensing the shifting legal ground and the presence of Julian Thorne's massive legal apparatus, quietly retracted the warrant and left. Adaptation. Julian's redemption and Lily's future. Julian had won the battle, but the war was only over when Lily was truly safe and empowered. He didn't just give her money. He created a trust fund for the twins' education and bought a small, comfortable house in a quiet, stable suburban town near a top community college. He sat Lily down one last time before they left the fortress. You don't owe me anything, Lily. Not gratitude, not obedience. The house is yours. The money is for the boys. Your job now is to get that college degree, start your own life, and break the cycle. I am your uncle, Julian. I'm here if you need me, but you drive your own destiny now. Lily, tears finally streaming down her face, didn't thank him for the money. She thanked him for the trust. You gave me the thing Elias tried to take. The freedom to choose my own path and protect my sons. Julian, for the first time in 30 years, felt a deep, genuine warmth spread through his chest. He looked at Finn and Leo, soundly asleep in their car seats, and then at Lily, whose eyes now held determination instead of fear. He had found his family again, not through wealth, but through a shared history of pain and a common future of hope. He realized the real American dream wasn't about building a multi-billion-dollar empire. It was about protecting the tiny, fragile lives that mattered most. Final CTA, gratitude, moral vow. Julian Thorne had lost his sister, but found his redemption under a bridge. He was no longer the ruthless tycoon. He was Julian, the uncle. But the question remains. Can a man who built his life on ambition truly leave it all behind for the quiet power of family? Share your thoughts below on Julian's final choice.